whatever it was, whatever phrase you heard in your family, it was likely about survival. That's the gift they gave us. They figured out how to survive. Now we get to figure out what is next.
This is Where We Land, a podcast bringing together stories of immigration and multicultural identity. I'm Luciana.
And I'm Claudia.
We're originally from Peru, so we have a pretty good idea of what living between two cultures is like. But we believe that no matter where you come from, immigrating to the U.S. is an experience rich with duality and meaning.
Join us as we speak with immigrants from all over the world about their journey and how it shaped who they are today. In this special episode, we're bringing you our conversation with Shawna Wells. She's the host of the podcast Legacy, Lyrics, and Life. And she is also the founder of 7 Gen Legacy, where she coaches leaders on how to align their work with their personal goals.
We were so excited to talk to Shawna because her work fits right in the themes we explore on this podcast. She helps people navigate their legacy by understanding the lessons and gifts passed down through generations and how all of that shapes the work we do in this world. Shawna isn't an immigrant herself, but we talk about legacy in one form or another all the time in this podcast, so we had to have her on.
We also did a little coaching session at the end where we explored my legacy. That was scary.
Okay, let's dive right in with Shawna.
I think my journey starts with my grandmother. I'm named after her. My name is Shawna Pearl Wells, and my grandmother's name was Pearl. And her story starts in moving from Wetumpka, Alabama to Hamilton, Ohio. Two places you probably never heard of. Sight unseen, pregnant, 8 months pregnant, without my grandfather. My grandfather followed behind her. And so I believe that the disruption of our storyline happens when my grandmother decides we're no longer going to be on a plot of land that has owned us for generations, and we're going to start the story over. And that's what they did.
Okay. So they went to Ohio, and is that where you were born?
No, we were part of the Great Migration. They moved from Wetumpka, Alabama. They have 7 children. My father is James Wells. He goes into the Air Force. So he goes to, with a friend of his, to Bristol, Pennsylvania, also a town that many of us have probably never heard of, but right outside of Philadelphia, and ends up then creating a life for the last 42 years, meets my mom, and they start a life there. And so that's how the story goes. And then I moved to Las Vegas. So this woman who decides to make a journey ends up having people all over the country, all over the world, make impacts in their own corners of their lives. So I do believe she set forth she created a different storyline.
Yeah, the traveling spirit, right? Once she does it, and then her children grow up knowing, oh, my mom did this. She moved us all here. And then some of them do that as well. And then their children grow up, oh yeah, my parents, we moved, or they moved us, or yeah. So it shows you that it's possible. And you're like, oh, well, if my mom did it, I might do something like that.
True. That seed of possibility, right? If you can see someone before you has taken a risk, that the risk for me to move from Philadelphia to Las Vegas was much less risky because the risk was taken by someone else in the generation that came before me. And so being able to, I'm sure you both have these sets of circumstances that have been laid forth by the last generation.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, actually, yes, we do have grandfather moved himself out of his tiny, tiny little town and moved to the coast of Peru. Our parents then moved with grandmother and baby dad. He was still just a baby. And then our parents moved us when we were kids to the United States. And then now we then went back to Peru, and then we ourselves have now immigrated to the United States as adults.
And moving around really does seem, it's a lift, especially countries and all that, but it really just doesn't seem as daunting, I think, for us. I finished college and I was like, my first job out of college will be in Mexico. And then I'll move back to Peru. And then I'll go to school elsewhere. It just doesn't seem, especially once you do it once.
Yeah.
Oh, you could bounce around. Oh, maybe I'm going to do this for you. It just becomes just more doable, manageable.
In your head, at least. You still have to do the work. But in your head, it becomes like, oh, we can do that. I'm so curious, when we asked you that very first question, where in the world does your journey start? And you're like, my journey has to start with my grandmother. It seems very fitting because your work has a lot to do with legacy. So would you please explain, why is legacy so important to you? I'm just so curious.
Okay, I love this question. In other words, you're like, what the heck is legacy, right? And I think we're taught really early on, or at least I was, legacy is only for the wealthy. That you can leave a legacy if you can do an estate plan and you can build a trust and you can do all these things. You could pay for your name on the side of a building, right? All three of us here have been talking inside of the legacies that have been left that have cost mind, body, spirit, and have nothing to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
The origin story of how I came to this word legacy is it came to me. And so I started my early career as an educator and a principal. And within a few years of being a principal, someone asked me to start doing executive coaching. So I started on this journey of working with principals who were Black women like me. And in the conversations that we were having, the work of being a principal, of working inside of education and inside of schools where we are literally raising the next generation to be free thinking and to be connected to one another, it was so much more than a job. And in that, it became then a place that was causing exhaustion and burnout. The answer to the question that I would ask them, like, well, why do you keep showing up, was always connected to legacy. I can make an impact here. I got my education because someone believes in me. All of these stories were so incredible to start hearing. And so, for 10 years, I was operating as an executive coach, hearing stories. And one morning I woke up and I was like, legacy. So the way we define it at 7 Gen is it's actually about generational health building, the decisions that we get to make in the circumstances of our lives. And we see the circumstances of our lives happen through what we call the 6 realms of a life well lived. But if we are able to have power, access, wealth in ways that the people who came before us did not, and that's for sure the case for me, then we also need to figure out what framework we start thinking through, because they were trying to survive. They were trying to help, like, go get your education, go get that good government job, whatever it was, whatever phrase you heard in your family, it was likely about survival. That's the gift they gave us. They figured out how to survive. Now we get to figure out what is next. How do we help the people beyond us and ourselves live healthy, reasonable lives that are connected to how we want to be in the world?
You mentioned in that definition of legacy, generational health. What is that exactly?
Okay, so, everybody's out here talking about wealth. Like, I want to be a generational wealth builder. Many, like you've encountered, I'm sure, a lot of conversations on this. What does it mean to be wealthy? Do you have an answer to that? If I ask you, what does it mean to be wealthy?
Oh my gosh. I don't have an answer to that, because wealth is just such a, like, the monetary issue is just so, like, obvious, but it like clearly encapsulates so much more than that. Like, wealth, like, to be rich in what, right?
Yes.
Money is just one thing we all need to live, and it solves a lot of problems. But other than that, you don't just need money. Like, you want to be rich in relationships and love and care and community and in, so many things. Like, I want it all.
And that was such popular phrasing. Like, I don't know, I'm a 90s kid. So it's such popular phrases. Can women really have it all? And the question is, what is all, or what is wealth? And so we started working with folks on legacy. People would come to us and want to talk about, how do I get more? And the question that we started asking is, well, what's enough? What's enough to fund your legacy? How do you live a life that funds the legacy you aim to live and leave? And what ends up happening then is that we get to redefine, move from wealth, right? Because none of us have a definition for it. Turns out, right? Like, we're all trying to get wealthy, but we don't have a definition for it when it comes down to it. And if you don't have definition, you're probably not going to be able to imagine the possibilities connected to that. So,
and it means different things for different people. I mean, even seeing it from one country to another, wealth in Peru means one thing. Wealth in America means something totally different.
Like, the achievable level of wealth, of monetary income that you could even dream of in Peru is very different to what anyone can dream of here in the United States. Yeah.
This is so true, right? What wealth does is it takes the context out of what we are actually trying to do. And so I would argue we all have the capability of asking ourselves more sophisticated questions.
So who are the people that are reaching out to you, and what do they ask you for? Like, what is like the number one thing that people come up to you and be like, I would like to achieve this with you?
Yeah, this is juicy. So most of the time, folks who are coming to us are people who are first in their generation to experience wealth, access, or power in whatever way that's defined, right? So they've gotten to this point where they're like, I've done it. I've followed all the rules. I did everything that I was supposed to do. And most of the times they're asking themselves the question, what's next? What's the next dream? How do I do this right? And turns out they're actually like, there isn't a right. There is a, what do you want to do? And so folks are coming to us trying to figure out, I've done it all. I have everything. I got the partner. I've got 2.5 kids. I've done it all. I don't feel good.
Right. Nothing happened. Where was the magical thing that was going to be like, boom, you know? And I'm trying to think that about like, because obviously, you know, we talk about the immigrant experience on our podcast. And I was just thinking like, yeah, thinking about those generations, people that came, previous generations that have like left really terrible circumstances, settled here, had kids here. And that those kids or those grandkids are now basically growing up with like all of the things that, you know, don't really understand the stories that their parents or grandparents had to struggle through. And I think they are asking themselves like, what does success look like, or what is the goal now? Because it isn't survival, right? So.
Yeah, I think it's very clear with immigrants because, as you were saying, you know, the previous generation gave you a gift. And with immigrants, that gift is so clear. Because it's like, oh, you brought us here for a better life. And you grow up knowing that. You grow up knowing that part of your story as the child of an immigrant is like, oh, my parents gave me this gift. They sacrificed and brought me here and left everything they knew behind so that I could have a better life here. And that comes with that automatic pressure of like, well, what do I do with this gift? Can't mess it up.
Yeah. Well, I have to deliver because they sacrificed a bunch for me to have this, yet I don't know any different. And now I have to deliver. Or if of a less panic version, what does that look like? What is that, right?
And the stakes feel freaking high, right? It's like, I don't want to mess this up, right? I personally, but I also have all of these, the voices of my ancestors' wildest dreams. We did a podcast with my good friend, Angela Perry, and she's like, what if our ancestors' wildest dreams were for us to rest?
Well, someone needs to tell me that.
Yeah, that's a hard one to believe because I don't hear any voices from the past telling me to take it easy.
I know. But what if it's like they must have dreamed? I know my grandmother worked 3 jobs. We all have similar stories like that, right? And so it's like, I know for sure she didn't want me doing that.
Right. But like even now, I have 2 small children. And yes, I mean, I don't want them, like, I want them to have ease and peace of mind and to be able to choose. But I do want them to have fulfillment and drive and want because having purpose is so important in, you know, and just being able to live, I think a fulfilled life does come with like achieving certain things. I don't want them to hopefully not have to work so much that they can't enjoy life, but I do want them to have, you know, fulfillment. So it's just, I don't know. I'm also not telling them to rest.
No, I know. Because for me, I'm very achievement oriented, right? I want my kids to come home and I want them to tell me about all the things they accomplished in school. I'm even sometimes like, right, but did you do the next thing? And she's like, I only had to do this thing. And I'm like, I know, but my partner's always like, did the thing she was asked to do. Ease up a little, Shawna, right?
Right.
I know where it comes from, right? Because to be where I am, I had to do more than everyone else around me. And so it's bred inside me. I cannot help it.
Also, didn't we inherit all these things also? Like the hustlers that got us here, that gave us all these gifts. What? They're not in my DNA. However it is I absorbed all that. They were never telling themselves, to take it easy or to relax or to calm down. So I have that in me as well, whatever it is.
That's the thing with the examples. Like, when I think back to my grandfather, as I'm sure you think back to your grandmother, I didn't see him take a break in his life.
Never.
Till literally his body was like, I'm done. Did he leaving this earth is when he rested, like literally. So I'm just also having seen that, it's kind of hard to just like, I think he wants me to just take it easy. Like, I don't think.
Yes. And how do you do that? Right. And this is like the intersection of that question, because we're sandwiched in between these generations, right? We've got our kids who are like, we want you to live lives of fulfillment, and we know how we got here. So how do I bring the equation together? Instead of people asking, what do you do for a living? We're asking them, what gives your life meaning? I would really prefer everybody be asked that question, right? Because that's a whole different answer. Here we are in this place where we've never been before, and we get to now think about what are the questions that we need to ask ourselves that are different than the questions that came from the generations that came before us.
I'm so curious, in the immigrants that you've gotten to work with, would you say in percentage of like your clientele, is it 20%? I'm just curious how many, because I can imagine this being such an immigrant problem to have as to like deal with identifying their legacy.
30%, and it's more now. And
oh, wow.
I would say,
Okay.
yeah, this is really poignant for the generation that is the third generation, right? And so I think we're all of us are coming to the question, like my family did not choose to immigrate here. We got chosen to immigrate here. On my father's side, on my mother's side, they did. And so like, I am of the generation that finally gets to ask the question, what now?
Okay, so we're going to do a mini coaching session now. You've told us that it works best when it is focused on just one person, so that will be me. Can you please set up for our listeners what a coaching session is and what we're going to be talking about?
Yes. Okay. So when we start our personal legacy relationship and conversation, we start with an exercise that allows you to explore your personal legacy statement. And that sometimes it's done with me, but most of the time it's done on your own first. And so, as you know, you had a chance to, and I'll explain the whole exercise, but you had a chance to go back in time. You did some time traveling to the generations that came before you. You came present to your own current understanding of who you are. And then you were able to look forward to say, okay, what is it? What is the impact of my life 3 generations from now? So as we do that, then what we do is we start to shape what's called a personal legacy statement. So we're going to start on that today to think about. So how does that sound?
That sounds great. I am ready.
All right, let's do it. Okay, what do you make of the difference between what you were able to see when you went to the past and what you were able to see when you came forward?
So in the past, and this is mentioned in the guided video, but the past was very negative. Not negative, but the past was very sad to me. It brought up like what I imagine, because they say envision what you see. And everything that came to mind was very sad to me, because I think of Peru, I think about it with a very nostalgic lens. Even when I'm there, I'm like, it's a place that can be so much better off than it actually is. It has potential to be doing so much better. And I'm speaking generally, like everyone has the potential to just level up a bit. But there are structural reasons why that's not possible. And so I feel a lot of nostalgia around that. And I feel a lot of sadness around that. So when I think about the past, automatically I thought about Peru, and I thought about Peru in the 60s. I was like, oh, people that were very like humble and very, had limited access to things. And they were very much, people who are like from very humble origins, and their clothes are always very, very clean because they have dignity and self-respect, and they're hard workers. But there is something about their life that just makes it obvious that their life is much smaller than what it actually could be. Yeah. And the gift that I was given in that part was that, well, actually, no, because most people live very small lives. Like that's just the reality of the universe. And so what makes a person's life big is the fact that it's yours. Like my life is the biggest thing to me. Like it's huge. It's the biggest thing ever because it's mine. So that's what makes your life big. And then as I came into more like the present and then future thinking, it became much more like positive and more like, whenever I thought about the impact I wanted to have, I thought of everyone I come across. I didn't think about the planet or the world, or I just thought everyone who meets me, that's my impact. Nothing more, nothing less, but still a big task. Like, I don't think I do that right now, but I would aspire to. Everyone who meets me, I will impact in this way. And the way that I landed on was that I want to create greater understanding for those who live outside the norm and embolden others who are too afraid to break with convention to do so. That's it. That's the goal.
So you said very quietly, you said, I don't think I do that now. You shared with us the impact you want to make. You said every single person I want to embolden or I want to encourage and strengthen to come out of the norm. What's in the way of you doing that right now?
I think maybe it's just selfishness or like, yeah, because like sometimes you don't feel like it. Like sometimes you can't, you know? Some days you're just like, you know what? Let me just get through this. Like, because sometimes you don't show up in the way you want with certain people because you're just having a day and you're like, you know what? This is how we're going to do this today. We're going to say hello. We're going to do what we came to do, but I'm not going to give you more than that because that's all I have to give right now.
I mean, I think it's kind of impossible for one person to be one thing, the same thing all the time.
Yes, but it is. But if you're asking me ideally what I would like, this is ideally what I would like to always try to do.
Right.
Because the times that I have done it, it just feels so great.
Well, so how often do you feel like, oh, I'm doing this? Like, I feel like I'm living the legacy that I aim to live.
Recently, I think it's been a bit bigger just because I did like some changes around work specifically. Before, pre-pandemic, I think like most of us, we all did something crazy during the pandemic. Because we were like, let's liberate ourselves from these shackles, right? We're all going to die. So I made a big change. I made a big career change during the pandemic. And before that, work was very much, Luciana can tell you, she won't let me lie. I was a slave to my desk. Mm-hmm. I lived work. I could set up a cot there, like the office. I didn't really, but I'm exaggerating. But yeah, I lived for my job. That now I'm like, the pandemic really liberated me, guys. So now I'm like, never again on the struggle bus. I'm only jumping in cars that I want to be in, just to keep the metaphor alive. Yeah.
So what percentage of time?
Gosh darn it. You're sneaky like that. I would say around 40-something% of the time. Also, I'm a negative. You know, I'm a glass half empty kind of girl.
I would say 70 to 80.
Really? Because to me, I just feel like I've done it in work. I do it with friends, but not always. I do it with family less because you're the least intentional with them sometimes just because they're always around and they're always there. You kind of take them for granted. But yeah, okay, I take your feedback and I'm going to upgrade to 50%. I'm going to say I'm a 50-50 kind of girl.
Okay. So you said, I've had this win. Like, that's actually really beautiful and courageous. So I just want to hold up the mirror to say, you decided at work you were going to change your relationship to it and you made some decisions. You said 50%. If we were to move that 50% to 60% more aligned to that personal legacy statement, in what area would you focus your time? And so I'm going to share with you the 6 realms. Okay. So the realms are play, work, well-being, and well-being includes spiritual, mental, physical, community and relationships. That's one. So community and relationships, service, and financial freedom.
I would say play and service.
Okay. Pick one.
I guess service, because service is currently not aligned with what I said I wanted. I want my objective to be. Yeah. What do you call it? I volunteer with this NGO and I really like doing that. I've always liked volunteer work. It feels really good. But I feel like that doesn't fit in like the type of work that I do there and how I help out, though I like it and it's great. It's not my favorite. I've done all types of volunteer work. This isn't my favorite one. It was just like the best fit that I could find. And also it doesn't really fit when I look back at I want to create understanding for those who live outside the norm. This isn't doing that. That it has nothing to do with it.
So how might you move to more alignment in this category?
I would have to try to find something try to be of service in some way that fits with this. But I don't know. I would think I'd have to really give it a think.
Okay. So let's hone in on that. What specifically do you want to do between this Monday and next Monday to think about how might I move my service realm to be in more alignment?
Shawna, I love homework. You have no idea.
Claudia's going to pull out her Excel sheet right now.
Oh my gosh. Luciana knows. I drive her insane. Every time we have an issue or a decision to make, I'm like, so I made a spreadsheet.
Between my actual job and the podcast, I'm drowning in spreadsheets. I need to break the shackles from the spreadsheet. That's what I'm going to do.
Please get that on a t-shirt.
I think I could do the research. I love a good research. I love a good internet deep dive. I can research and see what's out there that fits with this purpose more.
That's beautiful. So based on our conversation, I gave you homework, but what do you want to do next?
I think the first thing I want to do is like get this like goal and try to like, does it fit here? Is it fitting here? Is it not fitting here?
Beautiful. Does this feel like an okay place to press pause?
Yes, this feels like a lovely place to press pause. So that was our conversation with Shawna. What do you think, Luciana? Where did we land with this one?
The thing that struck to me the most is like this third generation, how, like these are the people questioning, like, what do I do? What do I do? And like, that feels like such an ultimate luxury privilege to be able to ask yourself, well, what do I do? So taking the fact that 30% of her clients are immigrants, they've gotten to this place, like the third generation has gotten to this place where now we get to have this luxury. And if that is not what your grandparents were hoping that you would get to have. Like, first of all, like they achieved their goal, right? You get to ask yourself this question. And just how daunting it can be and just all of the pressure that exists from these previous generations. And I feel that like when we were talking about what we personally feel that our previous generations, sort of like our grandfather is telling us, it definitely isn't rest. Right?
No.
It definitely isn't rest. And I think why it becomes so tricky is because obviously you have your own specific wants, needs, desires, but also the voices in your head that are playing this, the values, what would have meant something to them.
Yeah.
You're just like living up to just so many expectations and it's tricky. It's tricky.
And also just like, two things come to mind. One is the idea of a gift, right? Mm-hmm. Like you just said it right now. Shawna spoke about it in these terms, the term of like, they have given you this gift, like with that gift that your past generations in your family have given you, right? Any gift comes with pressure because it's like, oh, well, this is new and I value it and I don't want to ruin it and I want to make sure, I want to take advantage of it. Like, so that automatically, a gift comes with responsibility, comes with pressure.
Pressure, for sure.
That's right off the gate. And then like this idea of rest, of like, well, to have a better life. What does a better life mean? Wouldn't it be a more relaxed life? Wouldn't that be part of the gift then?
Right.
And it's like, well,
you feel this guilt taking that part of the gift.
It's guilt for sure, but I also think there's an extra component, which is, so there's this book called The Year of Rest and Relaxation, which is like, this woman basically wants to like sleep through life. It's a metaphor for like consumerism and being disengaged and whatever. Anyway, the point is, with rest comes disengagement. Like it just goes hand in hand. There is a level of disengagement that comes when you say, I want to live a more relaxed life. I want to live like have a more restful time.
Right.
Take things easier, not be so hard on myself. That requires a level of disengagement from the world.
Yes.
And I think that is where the guilt comes, because you're like, do I deserve this? Why am I afforded this? Like, am I even allowed? Like, it feels irresponsible to disengage. It feels irresponsible to rest.
Also, the examples that you saw of your ancestors, like your parents, your grandparents, weren't doing that. So you're like, well, this just kind of doesn't feel natural.
That's just not what you do. Yes. And so I think that is the big paradox, which is like, we're all striving because we want to get to a place where we could be afforded some rest. Mm-hmm. And then when people actually get there, I think the big issue is that it's not equal. Like, we don't all get there together.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait, why me? Because, like, what?
So that'll bring on some level of guilt as well.
Of course, because you live in community, in society, in a world that is very few have reached this place.
Yeah. The ultimate gift is the choice, the being able to choose. And when I touched upon it a little bit when we had our conversation with Shawna about like how for my kids, I hope for them that they can choose. And I hope that it is an easy choice. Like, I hope that when they reach the time to choose, that they aren't hearing a bazillion voices, that maybe they've grown up more comfortable with the choice, maybe less guilt attached to it, maybe less afraid of making a mistake, of choosing wrongly, of experimenting, but to actually, I think if anything, it is more engagement because you're engaged in this growing up with this idea that what will become of yourself, not reaching 30, 40, whatever it is, and be like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? What is my legacy? Like all of these questions maybe earlier on, like living your life with intention and purpose earlier on, instead of just being a question that hits you midlife. Having those questions earlier would be nice.
Yeah. Also, something I really enjoyed was the coaching. I thought that was really fun.
That was really fun to watch.
It was really fun to do. Because, it's like anything that can help reveal anything about myself. You know me, I'm just so self-centered. But I love like digging into what's inside me. Why is it there? So I got to thinking about it afterwards, where I was like, oh yeah, I want to help create greater understanding for people outside the norm. And I was like, maybe even marginalized groups, just anything that isn't the norm, right? And that got me thinking of like, where does this come from? And I think this one memory came to mind of like me and my best friend Bernardo from school, who when we were like 14, 15, we made this silly little pact that a lot of kids do where it's like, oh, if we're both single by the time we're 30, we should get married. And I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, but we should say 40, not 30. There was something inside my 14-year-old body that was like, let's make it 40 because I don't think I'm going to get married by the time I'm 30.
That's just, no.
Even though 30 was like perfectly normal, like, especially at that time. But something inside my little brain was like, no, I don't think we're going to do it like this. So I think I've always felt outside the norm, even if I didn't present that way or look that way or whatever.
So it's kind of like you want to help people like you, like yourself when you were younger a little bit.
Yeah, because I've felt throughout my life that I've noticed when I've done that, like without even trying to, it's been so rewarding. Like I've had experiences where like in my early 30s of friends calling me being like, hey, you've always talked about going to therapy, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I've been going since I was like 18. Well, I've recently been told that I should maybe be on medication. And they're like ashamed of it. They're telling it to me like as if it's some dark secret. And I'm like, oh wow, okay. So it's helpful to be the loudmouth and be like, I do this. And then eventually other people will confide in you or ask for help if they need it. Yeah, and it just feels nice.
It's a good goal to have. And yes, it tracks with you. It does.
That's it from us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode and check us out on Instagram at Where We Land Pod. Hasta la vista, babies.
Ciao, ciao. At Where We Land, we know some immigrant experiences are harder than others, especially for those in the margins of our current legal system. If you would like to help, we encourage you to support organizations that provide services for immigrants and champion their rights. You can find a list of organizations in the show notes.